here in Mandela and ensure that it goes into the recirculation. And that was then done in 2019. It's important to mention that the proof of concept was there. It was originally done in 1993. So we just dusted those plans and ensure that we can actually redo the temporary arrangement again. So in 2019 it was commissioned, and from there we actually get additional 40 megaliters of water into the city. We would pump raw water from there into that reservoir and put in chemicals, settle whatever sludge or heavy objects that are there, take clean water and pump gravitation to Mandela. Then at Mandela we'll blend it with plus or minus 140 megaliters of water that will have gone through the permanent treatment well. And we actually blend the water, improve the quality, and ensure that water that we receive in the city is of good quality. Obviously, since 2019 up to today, there was no issues. We managed to keep the quality of water to the required standard, probably with an exception of turbidity at some point, but I think from a health perspective, it was water that was safe to drink. And that was an intervention which was required for us to augment water. Because without that intervention, we would have then shortage of water in the filtration system, and we would have intermittent supply. Just another view to show how that scheme would work. So raw water into Grassridge, treat it there. At Mandela, we then blend it with water that comes from here, 140 megaliters, blend it here, then put it into Mother Pump Station, Chelsea, then it goes into the reticulation, including Kwamabushe, western areas, Dispatch, and other areas. So that has been in operation since 2019. Just a pictorial view of the reservoir. Water would come in, raw water in there. There are steerers on top of the reservoir, controlled by motors, mix chemicals in there. When it attracts, all the objects that are in the water that are not visible to the eye, make them healthy, settle at the bottom. Once there, then the rollers on top of the reservoir inside would then collect clean water. Then it goes to Mandela where it's actually then blended with water from the Directorate treatment waste. But there is also a chemical, chlorine chemical dosing plant. We actually then dose the water there before we release it to ensure that all bacteria that are harmful to our health are killed. And that arrangement has been operating since 2019. And again, it appears that became one of our failures as we actually had, quality of water deteriorating, over time. We thought it's important just to map up the water treatment factory, as I call it. We get intake water. This is a conventional plant. We mix it with chemicals. Then from there, the particles settle at the bottom. There's sedimentation, then we take out the bottom, the sludge at the bottom. Then from there, clear water flows into filters. We filtrate it, then we disinfect it, then it goes to storage, then we actually get into a distribution system. What I would like to mention is that the Grassridge temporary treatment rates exclude this process here, the filtration component. Because again, it was a temporary treatment. There are no filters at that reservoir. And mainly the blending as well as the disinfectant was actually then used to ensure that water complies up to the end of the day when it goes into the system. But in all other plants, this is the conventional process that we follow on our 7 treatment plants that are in the city. And I can confirm that they are producing water to a good quality that complies with the 241. In terms of monitoring, all our 7 treatment rates, except these are the processes that we are engaged in. There is a monitoring from an operational point of view every 4 hours. There is jar test that happens on plant. They adjust chemicals that we put into the plant. And obviously this is we would like to improve the quality ultimately at the end of the day. There's also weekly monitoring of water from the treatment works. This would mean that water from the clear well is actually taken samples and it goes to our laboratory, and a full sense analysis happens on those, and those results are then actually kept, and they do comply with Sense 241. There's also monthly sampling of our reservoirs that happens in the reticulation systems. Samples that are taken and tested with our scientific services. There's also weekly water reticulation sampling by Public Health, and obviously those results are communicated between infrastructure and engineering, and if there is any adjustments or remedies that are required, they continuously happen within that engagement. The results are then reported and monthly to the Department of Water and Sanitation, and are often loaded on their website for the public to see the compliance thereof. I just want to go to the incident of the failure that happens with our water quality. I think as we publicly went out on the 21st of February 2022. Such happened that in the week leading, that is the 14th up to the 19th of February, there were samples, about 28 samples that failed in our reticulation system. And those samples, obviously, they were tested through public health monitoring process. Infrastructure and engineering was alerted of those failures. And as a protocol, what happens is then we'll actually apply remedies to those sampling points. The remedies might include, us dosing chlorine, into the zone reservoir that supply those particular areas. And then there was a retest that was done to make sure that, or ensure that, the remedy was effective. So it happened that on the 21st of February, the samples again failed. And the failure mostly was from a microbiological point of view, knowing that there was a presence of E. coli in our water system. And it was on that particular day that we took a decision that we must go public because it was the second failure, and our remedies in terms of chlorinating those points did not yield results. So it was become imperative that we actually inform the public. It was then immediately on the 21st, that a boil notice was issued. Following that, there was a troubleshooting of the system to actually determine where the source of the failure was coming from. It was then discovered on the 22nd, that it was Grassridge temporary treatment works that were actually causing failure of our water quality. And immediately on the 22nd, that was actually removed from the bulk integration system. Once that was done, obviously there was manual dosing of all distribution reservoirs with chlorine to ensure that we kill all the necessary determinants, bacteria that were in the reticulation system, and that was done on the 22nd. And there was now resampling that was continuously happening to ensure and check whether water was going to be safe to drink. Public health, again, is from the 23rd, they were actually doing resampling to ensure that there are no harmful bacteria in the water. It then happened, around the 25th, we actually get results again that ensured that, the E. coli in the system was no longer there, but still, from a coliform perspective, there are still other bacteria that were in the water. And we continued again to dose the manual dosing of chlorine in the reticulation system, and I think on the 27th, the results became clear that there was no E. coli as well as there was compliance from a coliform point of view. So we have then gone public again, I think on the 28th, to say that water is safe to drink because mostly, from market biological point of view, it was clear. And those results are available. We have appended, in the report that is being circulated now, there are results, I think, from around February 28th up until today, that can confirm, that E. coli as well as coliforms were complying, to the standards as indicated. Again, as part of the mitigation and awareness, I think public health, an outreach program to educate the communities around the boil notice, do's and don'ts in terms of what the public must do, and obviously that was to ensure that we comply with the legislation as well as ensure that the public is safe. But again, the problem is that the decommissioning of Grassridge then created another problem in the irrigation system. Is that then the production that was available to us then became far much less than 222. It then becomes 180 megaliters on a daily basis. So it meant that some other areas, as from the 22nd, were actually having water shortfalls. It means areas around, for example, Lorraine and other western areas were having intermittent supply from the 22nd up to today because of the shortfall of water within the irrigation system. It then becomes necessary that we again re-look at our Grassridge temporary treatment works and try to establish what went wrong, and with the idea of wanting to recommission it. I'll talk to that aspect a little bit later into the presentation. From a public health point of view, I've talked about the legal aspect of it, that they had a mandate obviously to inform, inform the communities. One, they've actually detected that there is a risk that water was not suitable to drink, and that happened, and that was accompanied with an outreach program as well. Obviously, those are some of the areas which public health is involved in. The water monitoring quality, obviously, that's what they do on a weekly basis, and if there is any non-compliance, they will actually then inform infrastructure engineering, and if there's any remedies that are required, we will actually then do that to ensure that water will always remain safe to drink. Okay, that was community outreach program. Obviously, with the communication office, those are some of the programs that were done through environmental health, boil notice, do's and don'ts, red response, what clusters, government departments. This was an attempt to reach as much consumers as possible to ensure that there is no ingestion of water that is not good for consumption. But from a way forward point of view, as I mentioned that the decommissioning of Grassridge, as we were containing the quality aspects, then meant that we created another problem, a problem of shortage in the system. We had then to evaluate options as to what then do we do. And these are the various options that are available to us. First option was it's either we leave Grassridge as is, decommission, and not do anything. And obviously there are advantages and disadvantages for that. And I think one of the issues that we set with is that there was intermittent and insufficient water in the irrigation system. And on a daily basis, there were communities that were running out of water. Plus or minus 50 megaliters of water was short in the system. And it means that communities could go 2 days, 3 days without water in other instances. The second aspect was obviously the decommissioning of Grassridge. temporarily and actually wait, for the Noika system to be able to get water, which we envisage, around June, July. It's gonna actually give us, plus or minus additional 39 megaliters if you want. But then that means that we will then have to live with the deficit, live with the intermittent supply, and that was not an option. Then lastly, we looked at the recommissioning of Grassridge temporary treatment works. We looked at the advantages and disadvantages of that. Obviously, having looked into the processes and what has gone wrong, and I think one then, we thought that we can actually then develop, risk treatment for those, and we were able to recommission, and the advantages was that we can deal with quite a number of issues. Firstly, the issue that we're going to have more water in the reticulation system and avoid intermittent supply. Again, from a health perspective, it meant that we could avoid other health-related diseases associated with water shortage. I'm not going to go into detail, but I think this was a risk assessment which was done between the risk office, infrastructure engineering, as well as its internal audit. We looked into the risk associated with reopening, recommissioning of the plant, and I think from this we developed controls which we are going to actually adhere to. And one of the very important one as well is that the process of monitoring was going to be enhanced. And again, we developed other critical control points within the reticulation system that will be able to flag, if there is any, quality failures. And immediately we should be able then to either stop the plant if there was an imminent risk to have. I'm not going to go through all these controls, but I think they are available for your reading. But I think there was quite a lot of work that happened into assessing this risk and developing, risk treatment, ensure that that failure will never actually happen. Among other things as well, there was issues around sludge and dislodging of the reservoir. Obviously, it's not a conventional plant. It wasn't designed to automatically dislodge. So there's manual sludging that happens, and we had to determine the frequencies and ensure that sludge doesn't build up and actually contaminate water. At the end of the day, we have to look at the budget, the funding, and other alterations that needed to be done on the plant, especially around the chemical dosages dosage of chlorine to the water. There was issues around failures because of backward pressure on the system, and I think those had to be modified, and that has been done. We had to look around obviously the strategic goals of the institution to continue to provide safe drinking water to all residents, and I think at the end of the day we made a decision that the plant needed to be open, and the plant has since been opened, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, and we are monitoring it closely. At this point in time, there are no red flags. We are producing water of good quality. We also had to clean the reservoir and dislodge it before we actually commissioned it. And we are constantly monitoring the sludge accumulation on the bottom and ensure that it's continuously being dislodged. From a public health perspective, there is work that is happening in monitoring certain critical points which has been established, and on a quite regular frequency, those results are going to the laboratory, and we continuously monitor if there is any intervention that is required. But I think we have also taken a conscious decision that we're going to be dosing all our reservoirs with chlorine on a weekly basis, ensure that if there is any bacteria that might be in the system, so we know that there is enough residual chlorine to deal with that. Again, it's remains a concern. We continue to be in drought. We still have got high water usages. And again, that's still a systematic risk that we sit with, because again, the demand is less than what we are producing. And at any given point in time, if you've got operational failures, it then affects your emergency storage and the system collapses completely. So again, we need to save water as much as we can in order to actually reduce the deficit and ensure that at least we've got an equilibrium between what we are producing as well as what we are consuming. Otherwise, we'll remain with these scenarios where we're going to have intermittent supply as long as we have got demand that is above the production level. And again, with the operational risk that we face with pump stations, with part failures, it means that each time we've got those, the system collapses completely, and it takes time to recover. And that will then cause communities to have intermittent supply. Again, the issue of quality, the issue of color of water, the issue of turbidity in water, it's going to be something that's going to be with us, because with intermittent supply, reservoir running dry, filling up, there is high risk that, with the reservoirs currently, there is also debris and sludge that is at the bottom of the reservoirs. That's going to be washed into the system. It causes, discoloring in water, as well as, some of the intervention that we are actually implementing. We have now learned that, some of the pressure reducing mechanisms that we are is causing high velocities in the reticulation system. And this is hard structure, there is a build up
debris.
The build up residual in the pipe, and with time it corrodes and actually causes color in the water system. We have had quite a number of discoloring complaints, in the Newton Park and other areas. And again, this is caused in most areas where we have got, pressure reducing valves. So the issue of quality, the issue of water shortage, and the operational risk, associated with operating in a drought are going to be with us for quite some time. And we're going to continue to experience, intermittent supplies in most of the communities going forward. We have prepared quite a documentation, obviously with results that are attached to it. We have prepared a recommissioning plan. I think it's also circulated. Obviously, there is an issue about us producing the results from June last year, which we are still preparing, Councillor Krupu, and I think that will be dispatched to you early next week. But some of the issues that caused, water quality as of the 21st of February, mainly related to the failure of the temporary treatment works, Grassridge and temporary reservoir. Thank you.
Let me first thank Acting Director. Thank you for the presentation. Now I'm going to take hands and because this is a joint meeting, we are going to share responsibilities. So I'm taking hands, and the chair will then be MMC Chonono Puyegi. Caucus chair, then Councillor Lamu, then Hugh, Bradley will be, Councillor Bradley will be the fourth one, and then Councillor Lance Kurbu, and then we go here to the caucus chair of the ANC, then Hugh, and then the last one, Councillor on the basis of can you rise?
With your permission, may I be seated?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So, firstly, thank you for the presentation, Edie. We do understand we're in a water crisis. We do appreciate the effort that you and your staff are putting in to manage the situation. We really do. I think getting Grassridge back online in this short period is testament to that as well. However, the absolute lack of communication is a huge concern. Official communication from the Metro is sadly lacking. And our internal communication, it is the biggest problem. We have, we can discuss this at the water portfolio, but we have enough councillors here. We have too many officials that just refuse to answer their phones. We have senior officials that tell ward councillors, if you want to talk to me, send me an SMS. Not a WhatsApp, just an SMS. In a time of crisis, the councillor is the link between the municipality and the public, and we must have that communication going. So, you know, that is a huge problem. The absolutely extraordinary lengths that we all had to go through just to get the basic information out of the municipality. It is mind-boggling with this crisis that we have now, but we will discuss that. Okay, so I'm going to go to your item on page 36, the potable water quality. And the table 331 tells us that the water quality was not within standards as of early December, when the bacteriological quality was well below acceptable standards. Now this is listed on page 37. We know that the quality didn't meet requirements. In summary, that item says there were 2 failures. The total number of unresolved failures was 0. None. That's for December. The concluding remark was that from the above it is evident that the water produced by the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropole is safe for human consumption. Now I have to go now to the health portfolios items on their page 15, and it says for December, 21 of the bacteriological resamples taken during December did not meet the required specifications. And it gives the dates. And I will just quickly go through. Chatty Clinic was E. coli. Railroad Depot, E. coli. Shop at the corner of Errol Street, E. coli. Letitia Baum Hospital, E. coli. New Brighton Clinic, E. coli. West End Community, E. coli. Hillside Municipal Office, E. coli. So in December we knew very well that we have a problem. We tested the water, we tested it again, and a number of failures occurred. The health says it can be concluded from the above that the effective water treatment was not achieved, and the compliance rate for December was 85, which is obviously very poor, but it says that we communicated these results to infrastructure and engineering. They go further to say that the health department, that as soon as any deviation is detected, the ward councillor will be, an emergency meeting is called. We will inform the ward councillor. Obviously, or it would appear none of that happened. I go further with the results. In January 2022, we found E. coli at Quasi-Kele SAPS. It was, that was the second time that we found E. coli at that SAPS department. It was 22, which is extremely high. There was also on that same day, Algoa Park, Diamond Hall, Dispatch, once again Letitia Baum Hospital, once again Benton Clinic, Pierplaas Clinic, and Roll. Once again, later in February, Colchester, SAPS, Harrow Depot, 28th of February. After the 21st of February, Cape received was also E. coli. So, my question is as follows. In the health report, they say that the public outbreak was not reported to them. My question is, whose responsibility is it to report a public outbreak? If water provides the water and health tests the water, who must declare a public outbreak? On the 21st of February, our executive mayor said, tomorrow we will present you with the turnaround strategy. We haven't had that turnaround strategy as yet. When can we expect it? The executive mayor said, we have tasked the Nelson Mandela University to do a thorough investigation into this. Have we tasked the university? When were they tasked? When can we expect them to report back to us? The municipality said, we heard the other councillor just now, saying that they've done an internal investigation and it's ongoing. We need to know what that investigation came up with. As I've just indicated, the E. coli results in Colchester was very high. And most of the ill people and the death was in Colchester. Is there a link? Must be tabled as soon as possible. We haven't seen any, let's say, consequence management yet across the board. We've heard of officials being suspended, but we know no one has been suspended. So what is the action of the municipality going to be with regards to consequence management? It is unacceptable that we have this crisis and nothing has been done that we know of by the municipality to do that. And then you've touched on the boil notice, but I'm still unclear. Who must give us that boil notice? Is it health? Is it water? Is it the municipality? Who then in the municipality? We heard the ED of health say he took the liberty when he was acting city manager to give the boil notice. It just doesn't make sense. So please, we need to know who must do that. And then, as I've asked already, was the emergency meeting held within the municipality at the very first instance when they realized that there's E. coli in our water? Thank you very much, Chair.
In that part of colleagues, that was identified by emergency meeting.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I hope there's a recognition, I know there is from the chairs, I hope there's a recognition of the role of councillors. Not today, but in general, and particularly with respect to this crisis. I was asked by a family member yesterday for the acting ED's cell phone number. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't give it to you. That is what your council is with. If you have a problem, you can go to your council. I'm not giving to members of the public phone numbers so that they can phone those of directly there's better things to do. We are the liaison between the municipality and the residents. It has been very difficult for us to perform that role in the last few months. Even now, we are sitting here with so many papers that we're trying to put together as opposed to one single report. And as my colleague said, it has been very difficult to get any information. In fact, we haven't got any information. We've actually got a refusal on our hire application. The only way we've got information is because we're in touch with the cell phone and we've got information and published it. So, is that okay, us as public representatives? So, I really think that has to be borne in mind, and recognition has to be taken of our role, which in many cases, I hope, assists the administration rather than obstructs. Chair, The failure of samples, my colleague mentioned December. In fact, it certainly seems that November was the turning point in the public health agenda. There is, for instance, in Monday, the 8th of November, 37 samples were taken. There were 8 bacteriological failures. 14 out of the 37 samples failed with respect to physical, aesthetic, operational, and chemical determinants. The decline did not begin in February, 2 weeks before the 31st of February. It, according to the public health agenda, began in beginning at the beginning of November. What did Grassridge fail? This question hasn't, as far as I've read, and I really did listen carefully, hasn't been answered. The media made a lot of mention of the quality of the fish oil water. That is highly contaminated and it's coming into Grassridge, and that our treatment processes can't properly cope with it. If that is the case, then this is obviously just going to happen again. I don't know how long it's going to take to happen again, but why did it fail? If the water coming in is of such a standard that the process could cope with it and produce water that when it was blended would give rise to drinkable water, why was there a failure? I haven't heard that answer. The risk mitigation strategy was referred to and explained in some detail. It does worry me, Chair, that the risk mitigation strategy appears to focus largely on the addition of more chlorine to the system. So in the short term, yes, that will kill bacteria and you won't be seeing E. coli, which is wonderful. We'll also not E. coli will think the water is safe to drink. But I'm trusting you, by the way, this is tap water from my home tap without a filter. So I'm trying to correct the trust deficit. I'm trying to assist you correcting the trust deficit here. But when you add, and you know this, when you add additional chlorine, and especially when you've got water that is turbid, contains organic matter, you are going to form more trihalomethanes. Trihalomethanes have been linked or have been shown to be carcinogenic. It's a long term, it's not an acute issue, it's a chronic issue, but we do drink water, those of us who try to be healthy, 2 liters at least every single day. It's not okay to throw chlorine at the problem. It isn't okay. We have to surely address what happens before Grassridge in order to properly address the problem. So I'd like to comment on that, please. Right at the beginning of the presentation, and of course it's in our agenda as well, but I'm sure it's of interest to everybody. The E showed a graph of the water availability from the west. That graph appears to show that we will run out of water from the west in June. It's March today, the 18th, April, May, June. Just around the corner. It hasn't been communicated, but if you could just confirm that, please. Is the water safe to drink? As I mentioned, I'm trusting you. There was an indication that the water is safe to drink, but when I look at the results from the 7th of March, which are somewhere in this pile of papers, I do find some failures with respect to E. coli that I think has failed. Is the water safe to drink? It worries me that in that presentation, there were no results. There was no results, nothing to show that there's zero E. coli in the water. Now, samples were taken this Monday by Public Health, this last Monday, on the 14th. The results should have been available on Wednesday the 16th. I wrote to the city manager and asked for those, and copied my colleagues in infrastructure engineering, asked for those results. I haven't received them. I don't write as an in-love, I write as councillor in in-love, more a public representative who would put her name on a poll and said, I will represent your needs and interests. And it's in that light that I asked for those results. I haven't received them. They're not on the table today. Why not? Is the water safe to drink? And where is the proof, please? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, so I would just like to raise a few pointers or a few examples of what has been happening in the western suburbs. So on the 28th of February, you stated that the water was safe to drink. Okay, so, and then on the 10th of March, we had a water outage in the western suburbs. When the water came back 4 days later, on the 14th of March, the water was brown, some of the water was reddish in color, and some of the water was yellowish in color. And I had reports of this from Kabiga, from Sherwood, from Rowan Park, and those were the areas mostly affected by the water outages because they were out for the longest period of time as well. So I just want to know, what is the cause of that, of those different colors? If you can give some feedback on that. And I know for a fact that I would not be able to drink water that looks like that. That water cannot be safe to drink. So how can I trust the municipality, and how can the people of this metro trust the municipality if they are not willing to release that information that is crucial to us knowing that our children can drink this water? I can afford maybe to buy water, but the next guy in the street does not have the ability to do that, and those are the ones that are mostly suffering during this, this drought. And I know it is a drought. I know that there is a reason for our water quality degenerating the way that it has, but I think it's still not an excuse for not making the results public. Yesterday, I got a report of the water being white. So obviously, it's being dosed with a lot of chlorine, but like Annette mentioned, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem completely. And then the communication, I would also like to ask that there be better communication with ward councillors, because if we have the communication, we will be able to keep the residents at least at ease, because they can then trust us, because they know that we know what's going on. And we get a lot of flack from the residents because we do not have an open communication with the officials, and I really appreciate that they could be. Obviously, I have some help. I've been getting some help from officials, but it should be more accessible and not as it is at this point in time. And then with the Grassridge coming back online now, obviously this problem happened before Grassridge came online, because Grassridge only came online yesterday, or maybe you said the day before, but I got information yesterday. So the sludge or the red or the yellow water, was it coming in from the Chelsea reservoir or the pipes in the system, etc.? If I could just get some clarification on that. Thank you.
Can we as your colleagues, that we start to respond, so that maybe more questions that are going to come, and maybe they might be covered in the responses now. And also, Councillor Makola mentioned that the public health will spend about 2 hours on this. I'm really hoping we're not going to get to that. So can we, there are some critical questions asked here that need to be responded to.
I don't understand these guys.
And maybe normally find, let me say, the newspapers are not kind to counsel of Nelson Mandela. Whenever you see it's painted in a different way, and we are normally in this world, and that's when a lot of things happen. But if there's one thing that we are united as councillors, is this issue of water quality. We can be divided about a lot of other issues, but on this one, we are more united. We are talking the same language, we have the same concerns, and it is councillors. This question was, I would even want, because I normally was this issue of officials. I don't get this, but I don't really understand this thing of officials that don't want to respond to councillors. I said to some of the councillors who have spoken, when you write to officials, copy me, and I'm still the MMC of Public Health. If that official don't respond, I'll make sure he or she responds. But you sometimes you decide that okay, you're gonna write to the particular official, and when they don't respond, now in this meeting, how do we respond to your correspondence with an official that you don't know about? We can't respond to that here. I've said, if you want information to Dr. Nodwen, ask him, copy me. I'll make sure he responds to you. So we must leave this thing of I don't know who's official, but I've worked with these ones at I&E. I've never had this problem that they don't respond to issues. It's new. If there's a new tendency now, it's wrong, colleagues. Councillors have a responsibility to respond to communities. When they want information, you don't hide behind technicalities, SMSs, WhatsApp, this and what. All of you got phones from the municipality, you can afford data, respond to WhatsApp, respond to SMSs. Let's not make things that are not supposed to be fighting, man. We must not fight about is something that is not supposed to. Councillors have a responsibility. Annette is saying, I'm protecting you by not giving your number to the public, but at least respond to me so that I can respond on your behalf to the public. Otherwise, you're going to give your number. No, we'll give it if he does that. Give it to the public, let his phone be the consent. Because you can't do that. People, the normal person in the street does not know Joseph, but they know the council. So Joseph must give information to councillors so that councillors can respond on his behalf. Let's not have this debate, man, next time. Officials who are who have this tendency must stop, man. Please. Must stop that tendency. It's wrong. So I said, Councillor, we're going to respond to those questions that have been posed. And I'm more interested in this thing of, I'm not just repeating on this thing of throwing problem at the chlorine. And there's this big word that I can't even pronounce, that the consequences of just throwing chlorine at the problem. And so let's respond to these things. So that is what we need to be clarified on, so that when we respond, we are confident in our response. That I don't know what is. Can't you tell us there the bank market t-shirts
Ek meen die presentasie het ek nou derde keer gesien. Daar gebruik om oor en oor en nou gebruik Joseph om.
My head was first.
I think is standing on for an order.
And you can please allow these hands that were noted to be finished and you
Okay, fine. Yeah. In that order, the colleagues that was identified.
Councillor Mari should respond as Councillor. I don't know if you are standing on a point of order. Because the next speaker must be Bradley Mari.
Okay, that's fine.
If you don't mind.
Yes.
Respond after you.
No, it's fine. Chairperson.
No. Councillor is fine with you.
That's fine with me.
Me first. Chairperson, we see this issue of communication and numbers. This thing is a behavioral issue amongst MMCs, the institution where you're supposed to get all this information. You have a problem as a council. I'm also talking about you're not at the hospital, it can't be able. Then is this particular issue which will come from months and it was not addressed. Then the MMC goes there. Instead of come to you, it creates that thing. If the MMC can do that, how the officials do the same thing. It's MMCs that create this thing. You are elevating above the word councillor while we are on equal. We are equal. We are councillors defending our people's right on the ground and whatever. You see, like the water crisis. We're supposed to be saying we are joining in this thing. Because there are in the schools, the water was contaminated and the schools. It's our children, not in graduation or Manabush, Hellenvale or Arcadia, it's our children. It might not be in Harmans, but it's our children. We have equal responsibility when you write to MMCs and we want to respond. And you know what? A simple thing. We still use this thing as a political tool while we are not in elections. It's far away. It happens in our areas. Like tomorrow is going to be election. They act in that behavior. So now I won't blame even an official. It starts with you as an MMC. How you behave is a behavioral thing. You respect your ward council. The official will follow you because your behavior shows that. You are a parent, your children do what you are doing. It's important that you understand that we are together in this. It's not the MMC who have been there alone saying the water is not a part of it. We are together in this. We must defend the municipality because the people look at us as councillors. 120 in that council, in that chamber. It's that this council are failing us. They don't mention the name, this the council is failing us. And so I'm appealing to all of you. I know you have a lot of administrative bodies, your coordinators. You know, yesterday they were shooting and the coordinator bring the electricity. Almost, you didn't even know. We were meeting with the people that shoot with Sarah in groups. And you see, your people are being, you want people to be once in the middle of shooting. Because as a total disrespect, when it starts a behavioral thing, they see it somewhere. While I'm busy to negotiate with this guy and do this thing because people are coming to the area, we just bring them. I have to rush to the other side and say, guys, your issue, let us address it. It's not an issue with me. It's an issue like amongst you. I'm saying this behavior, it starts where? It starts at the level of upper and the NMC level and go down to. Because it's a disrespect to us as councillors. You can write, nobody to pick up. A simple thing. But there will come a day. It takes people long to be patient with us. Until one councillor, behavioral chain of reaction. One councillor will find out something people are angry. And I'm going to, in particular, this committee. Senator Spoda, it affects us in our areas very badly. And we don't protect even our MMCs and our municipality. We are protecting them. So no, guys, we must do all use words just to come through it. But we are asking, let us respect each other. Communicate and communicate that. It assists us all. Let us use these nice WhatsApp. I like when you say you say the high English. Yeah. It doesn't matter to us. We can use our English here and you answer that one. We don't want that one. I'm saying, when we as councillors, these things is important. Let us respect each other and communicate.
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 points on my side. Firstly, let me start with the communication. Now, there is a WhatsApp group that was created. I'm not sure if all the councillors are in there. It's a nice tool to get information from the city as councillors, right? So I just want to put it out there that there is a tool in place for communication. The lack of communication, I cannot understand where the bottleneck is. Maybe that's the first place we need to look at. There is an opportunity for us to communicate very fast, instantly, right? The person that posts on this group is called Zuki all the time. So we don't know who Zuki is, where does he get information from, is it just filtered from marketing perspective, or can it include the broader spectrum of the metro when it comes to councillors? That's the one thing. Most of the stuff that we get is that kind of posters, which is boring. We don't even use it anymore. I will never post that thing and go tell people you can only flush one time, which means you can only go to the toilet one time a day. It's embarrassing to tell a community that doesn't have water, doesn't have electricity, doesn't have lights, robots to flush one time. That's all I can bring to the table. So, colleagues, let's use the tools. that is available to us. Like I said, I don't know who's in charge of this communication tool, but it's a nice one, it's working. Let's incorporate the communications between departments, especially when it's vital that needs to go out to the community. Thank you. On the issue of the Grassridge, and Councillor Lovemore asked the question, where did we go wrong? It's not clear, for me it was not clear where exactly we went wrong. I note that in your flowchart presentation, there was a filtration process that is missing in Grassridge. That I'm assuming it's at all the other plants, right? But this particular Grassridge does not have a filtration process. Are you saying that is where contamination started as a result of this process not being included in the plant? That's my first question on this Grassridge. Second one, is there future plans? Because where we find ourselves now, it seems as if Grassridge is playing a big role and might be playing a bigger role in the future to come. Is there plans to include a filtration process? The answer is yes. Do we have any time frames? If the answer is no, then why not on this one? And then on my last question, more towards public health. In speaking about the testing of the water, which the presenter said it's more public health director. In the standing committee, we raised the issue around 1 million rand of the budget that was removed from the monitoring systems on these facilities. So the systems that's supposed to monitor our water quality was at 1 million rand removed from the budget. In that same meeting, the ED said, and all the other directors said, that R1 million has now come back into the directorate and it's in the bank. They assured us and they guaranteed us the R1 million is in the bank. So my question is, with the money being in the bank, do we currently, as we sit here, do we have functioning monitoring instruments right now in the city? Does it work? And then lastly, in conclusion, when can we expect a report on the testing of these waters?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I don't know if I have to stand, but I would, if I have to, sorry? Can I sit? Thank you. Chair, I'm gonna, you see, what we must not do is rush through things which is important for the residents of the city. If somebody died, it can't be a rush. It is a priority. Now, I'm going to go to the presentation, page 6. What went wrong? And Chair, the problem with this is that I hope that we're making notes of this and that we don't miss when there's responses that these areas are covered. But also we need to be able to question the officials because, it's not just enough to make a statement, but one needs clear responses from the officials. Now, if I look here at point 1, what went wrong? The first one there. If you see the second one, third, there are 4 points what went wrong. Now, before I want to go, I'm going to go to the second point of Grassridge temporary facility treatment. We were told in this presentation that the filtering system was not working at the time when water was treated, was coming from Witgedag. That's what we were told. Now, what I wanted to know, at all our other treatment plants, do we have a filtering system? I think we've got 9, if I'm correct, or 8. Do we have that? I want that answered. I would have loved to have it answered now, but it's fine because my questions follow up as I get responses. Then, do we as officials know that if there is not a filtering, if the water is not properly filtered or there's no filtering system, the possibility will result that there might be contamination in the water or the quality might be compromised. Do we know that if there's a filtering system? Please, officials, take note of what I'm asking. Do you know if there's no filtering system at the treatment plant, that the possibility will exist that the water might be contaminated or the quality might be compromised in terms of sands? Now, surely, I want to know, did you know that we were pumping water from Nooitgedag into the treatment plant at Grassridge and from Grassridge into our system? Did we know that? Did we know that? And then, if we knew that, I want to know if we knew that we're pumping water into Grassridge, and if we knew that the filtering system that filters the water is not working, surely, and we knew that the possibility exists that the water might be contaminated, then where does that problem lies? With who? Who was the negligent? Somebody must be negligent because somebody must have foreseen. Because if the officials chair tells us we know where the problem lies, and one of them is the filtering system did not work at Grassridge, they should have known. We as councillors are not the professionals here. You know, but I don't want just our officials to explain this to us. You see, that's the problem, Chair. We're going to have people telling us they draft these reports. They tell us they draft the reports. They work on the system every day. How transparent is that information given to us that is not the experts here sitting here? They will tell us what we want to hear, what we think we want to hear, but at the end of the day, it might not be correct. That's why I'm saying I asked a simple, basic question. If you are telling us that filtering system did not work, why did you then pump water through that system? That's why we want to know, because surely somebody would have been negligent, because he should have foreseen that possibility of happening. Then, if you look at the irregular dislodging of reservoirs at required intervals, what I don't understand, and that's why I need clarity on this. But the problem is I'm getting clarity from people that's working on it that we now hold accountable. How's that? But I'm going to ask it. If you're treating water in the system, you showed us the process of what happens in a treatment plant. There are filters in there. I've seen filters in there. Now, surely if you treat the water, if there's a drought, and you say sludge sediments are at the bottom of the reservoir, you know all that. You definitely know all that. Because you know we have a drought. I mean, a drought we've been informed since 2015 we have a drought. Surely somebody must know if there's a drought, there's going to be a problem at our treatment plants. And surely systems should be put in place to make sure that when we treat those water and it goes into our distribution line and it gets to the customer or to the resident, we have dealt with the problem. Now, if you look at this, it says adequate chlorine system control during higher demands. Inadequate, I want you to see. Do you tell me the officials did not know, Chair, that during these drought periods and going into a summer season, the demand will be high, and with the low levels of water in our dams, we're going to sit with the problem at our treatment plants, that it might compromise our chlorine chemical treatment? Surely somebody must have known that. Because if you're telling us now that, you should have foreseen this. So somebody must be negligent. Why? Somebody must be negligent. Because they say, we know now where we went wrong. Are you telling us you didn't know? So we need answers on that. Definitely answers on it. And I don't want officials to get away from it. We want explanation. But Chair, I don't know how. That's why we're supposed to have an independent expert listening to these guys presenting to us and telling us if any of these guys are taking us by the nose. But we don't have that. So I don't know how their responses would be. But to me, it's common sense. That's where it is. As a lawyer, it's common sense. You should have known. Because you tell us there must be a filter. If there's a filter in all your treatment plants and there was not a filter there, why would you pump water in there? Why would you pump water in there? And if you know that there's a high demand out there and we're in a summer season and there's no water, it's drought season, you would then improvise with your chlorine levels. Because that's where they went wrong. But they should have foreseen this, because it's been coming on from 2015. So that's why, to me, there was pure negligence. Negligence. The officials were negligent. And if you're negligent, you should be held accountable. Because somebody died already. And people are still drinking this water. Then I'm moving off now. Then I'm going to deal with, I don't want to go into my report, my questions. I can't wait till next week. You should have come now because your report are telling us your results. When you go to page 36 of the agenda, and they give us these beautiful results of 97.9%, telling us that our water is excellent and in good quality from July till December. Now, I don't want to go over the other councillors. Councillor Dries and Councillor Lovemore touched on it, but I want to, because public health is also here, and public health, this is for public health including I&E. Public health told us, I'm just going to deal, if you look at our results in page 36, it says here, December, we had a microbiological quality of 98%. It says here chemical at 99%. December, 91%. You will see chemical 99%. In December, and you will see January 93%, 99%, which tells you our water was in good state. People can drink it. The problem is public health results. Let me give you public health results. In October, 157 bacterial samples were taken in October. 157. Out of that, 2 failed. In which areas? Stanford Road and Galvindale. What was in the water? 12 coliforms per unit of 100 milliliters was tested in Rocklands and in Galvindale. On chemical testing, that same month, 153 chemical samples were taken. Most of them did not comply. Why? The instruments were not working. One of the key instruments was testing for aluminium. We know that aluminium long-term can cause Alzheimer's. There's tests done. If you can't test it, then you won't be able to know what is the volumes of aluminium within that water. And if people use that water over a long time, you will have problems with your health. It might not be instant like the bacterial one, but it is long-term on the chemical side. That's in November, October. Now look at the build-up. November. 164 bacterial samples taken in November by public health. How many failed? 13 samples failed. I don't even go in, but it's in T-School, Utenek, Chetty, Galvin, Motherwell Dispatch, Quanabushel, Greenbushes, and Airport. It shows you here that an average test shows about 150 to 200 coliforms. So there was an average test. On the average of the failures, there were 150 to 200 in a 200 milliliter of coliform, of 100 milliliters, sorry. You know, it's between 150 to 200 coliforms units per 100 milliliters of water. It tells you the coliforms was very high. And when there's coliforms, chief, in that water, there's bacteria there. Because the coliforms are just indicators that there is something in that water which is not right. Which is high, remember, it must only be 10 out of 100 milliliters. So they're telling us, yeah, water was good, but our water wasn't good. That is in November, the chemical side of it. 118 chemical samples taken in November. Same thing, they did not meet the requirements because most of the instruments that was testing aluminium, nickel, I don't know what word, antimony, that's it, something like that, was not working. Now, if you do research on these things, you will find out prolonged use of even the nickel, antimony can cause things like liver damage, and that's where your problem of this chlorine, bronco, I don't know, it's like swearing a person, but something like that. I think Doc will know when I use the word bronco, but something. Bronchochlorophene, something like that. In December, I'm finishing up. In December, 164 samples were taken. Out of that sample, 21 failed. So now we see October was 2, November was 13, December was 21. Chemical side, same. Results didn't change. Now, I don't know the January results. But what I do know, in February, there was a problem. Because in February, we now automatically said people must use jig. So, there was a problem. I believe that this problem did not only come in January, in February. This problem was there in October, November, December. The problem was already there. So what I want to know after this long speech on just the results, because it's important, why haven't we declared then that people should not drink the water? Why do we only do it on the 27th, on the 21st of February? Why? Because that is a problem. And guys, we're only talking here about bacteria. Nobody's talking about the chemical part, which is a problem. Then, I'm ending. I'm done now. Let me see. So somebody must be held accountable. I said this in the public health meeting, and I say it again. Dr. Nodwele said, I want a response from Doc. Doc, when the water failed in October, did you notify I&E? In December and in January? Were there any responses to your notification? Because you were clear, this failure is bad in the items before public health. Was there any response? We haven't received a response. And then from the I&E side, when public health informed you about the state of our water, what have you done in October, November, December to cure that? I don't want to hear about February, because February you were late. And then I want to also know, why was this results not put before us on Monday's results, just to show transparency? Doc drew water on Monday. He drew water last week on Monday. He drew water on Wednesday. He knows what's going on. Why can't we not be informed? Just to know. You're telling us the water is fine, but we don't see the results. Why must we believe you if you have been keeping things away from us in October, November, December? Why must we now believe? Why must the residents believe you? We should, Chair, and it comes from the Chair now, we should request that whenever public health tests water on Monday and Wednesday, we give them time to take it to the lab to get the proper kit and everything. The following Monday's test must be made public on our social medias. Everybody, and it mustn't be the one that says our water qualified with 97%. It must tell us how much coliforms were in the water. It must tell us E. coli in the water. It must give the results of all those samplings that took place that specific day, and what was the outcome of those samplings, so that the people can have confidence in our water system, because currently we don't have. But we can't move away from what I said. We need answers. Somebody was negligent, and if somebody was negligent, must be held accountable. Simple as that. Thank you.
Councillors left who have not spoken, but then they are held up.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, take it back.
Infrastructure speaking here. It's your show. Infrastructure. All of
No, it's not okay. I was for you. Thank you, Chef. Maybe one must accept welcome the report. Though I
Grassridge can supply that to areas.
your presentation
Maar hy het die vraag gevra.
was I think on your presentation you focus more on what are the measures that you have applied, or what are the measures that you're going to employ in ensuring that the water is safe, but there is no assurance at the end of the day to say whether the water is safe. So in welcoming your report, I'm also having that reluctance. Two is that what I've picked up is that you are saying that you are doing monitoring your reservoirs on every 4-hourly basis. And I was left asking myself this, why was it not emptied out within those 4 hours that the water is relevant state for distribution to the society? Why was it not picked up earlier? If the monitoring is done within 4 hours interval, then means that there is something wrong. Maybe what you must do is that you must do your monitoring on hourly basis or even 2 hours before. Because I think it takes time for you to pick up that there is a problem. Three is that we're talking about raising awareness. And Councillor Tolono is saying that perhaps the media houses, the public platform are not being kind to us. But what are we doing with the internal market? What are we reporting to our people? That we are unable to win their trust. When we have got internal platforms that we can use in our advantage if we are sure of what we are bringing to our society. We cannot solely rely on the public media houses if they are somehow sabotaging us. What are we doing with our internal platforms as the institution? Maybe we need to work on that and possibly report what is going to be understood by the community. Because all of these phrases that we are using here are not going to be making any sense for our people. All that our people need to know is the word of confidence coming from this institution to say, this is what we've done, we're ensuring that we correct the mistake that was made and that the water is safe right now. The last point that I wanted to raise, rather is in your conclusion, and I was really frustrated by that slide. Because to me, it's really focusing on a restriction on how we're going to use it. But also, from the I&E side, it's silent on how we must save water. It restricts us, but it's silent on how we save water. I don't know if that makes sense. And one is left thinking that there is no plan as to how are we going to ensure that the leakages that we continuously report to the municipality and not receiving any response to ensure that we save water. We are in council's office, we are having maybe a book this big reporting water leakages. And nothing is being done about it. How do we then say we're going to be able to save water when we are not responding to such? And at the end of the day, we are expecting our people to pop up money paying for those services, wherein we are rendering services that are not of good quality to our people. Because at the end of the day, municipality must generate revenue out of services that are not the top quality. So, I think perhaps now the focus was on the water crisis. But if you are going to put restrictions as to how people must use water, you must also come up with precautionary measures or rather measures to say people must report their leakages on time and then the municipality must respond. Because all that you want to do, you want to save water. In the conclusion of the presentation, it is said that the drought is still going to take time. It's still going to be here. But there is nothing that talks of how we're going to respond to this, because it has been an ongoing problem, the issue of the leakages. But seemingly there is no plan in place as to how are we going to combat it. So I'm saying, in welcoming the report, but I've also had to highlight those areas. Thank you.
Chair, harassment before I comment to the presentation. I'd like to bring to your attention the fact that in Hudney, it's about a week now in Hudney is without water. It's about a week now. And there are no water tanks that are being provided for that community. I know it's not only Hudney. You can go to 141 as well, there's no water. Leave the fact that water is not 100%, we are not 100% sure about the quality of the water now, but there is no water. Even that of bad quality is not there in Hudney. So I think we need to pay attention, immediate attention to that point. Secondly, Chair, you know, as I'm sitting here, Joseph, I am thinking, when we discovered this issue of water, the mayor was on TV telling us that they would sit in a quick meeting in trying to check what is it that is a problem. And then she later came back, and I'm thinking to myself, probably the mayor asked from Joseph, that Joseph, what is it that we can do immediately to save the situation? And then Joseph responded to say, people must call in jeep or people must boil water. I'm just thinking to myself, is it Joseph who advised the mayor to go on TV and tell our people to use jeep in this particular way? And I think that was very wrong for these officials to tell the mayor to do that. It was not the mayor's place to do that. It was Joseph's place to tell us to drink gin if the water is contaminated. And I think that's the second point. I want to get chairperson of I&E. I think I want to rely on you in terms of the information coming to the ward councillors to say this is what is taking place around my department. I don't want to rely on Joseph. Leave the fact that we are all here to service the public. There is no private number in this contact details of ours. All of us were supposed to have our numbers because we are here to service the public. And even when we applied for these positions, we said we are going to serve the public. So I don't understand why we understand that the official cannot have a community member cannot have Joseph's number. That's wrong. They must call him. They must call him. He applied to service those people. They must call him. Because the reason they are calling him is because he didn't give us the information. So Chairperson, you have a role to play. You have a role to play in that department. And your role is to make sure that the ward councillors receive this information. So I'm not going to blame Joseph for consequence management. I'm going to blame you, Chairperson. If there is any consequence management, it must start with you and BI. Both of you, it must start with you before you go to Joseph. Because if it does not start with you, nothing is going to happen to Joseph. Nothing. So that consequence management, it must start with you, gentlemen, as chairperson. Because we have a role to play. You must play it every day with your officials. And then you give us information at what council. So the second issue, Jones, is that my colleague partly covered me on the issue of the lease. Because we're plumbers here. We're plumbers that the municipality employed. Yes, I understand it was not permanent, but we're plumbers here who are there now in the location are trained to be plumbers, to deal with these water leaks. And those plumbers are not being utilized today. And I know they were supposed to have been there, but I don't know what's happening. And probably Joseph will give us answer in that particular regard. So that those plumbers, they assisted us in ward councillors' offices, because we phoned them directly to go and fix those water leaks. But now we have this permanent staff of the municipality who, before they fix anything, they start to cook them. Before they fix anything, they cook and sit there and eat. Then they go and fix that and analyze the problem before they even fix it. They leave, they come tomorrow and fix that thing. Now I'm saying, let's ask Joseph to bring back those numbers. If we leave this under APWP, they must come back so that they deal with the issue of water leaks. You see, Chairperson, our residents does not believe that the water is safe. Even today, they don't believe. If you can go to these water points, these people who are selling water, you will see the queues. People are queuing there, buying water. Because they don't believe that this water is safe. Now, I want us to come up with strategies that will make our people to trust, because now we must bring back the trust to our people, because our people does not trust anything that talks to water. Now, I'm saying let's bring back that trust, because it's now broken, and it's going to take time for our people to believe us, because anina nyani.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
You are not truthful to our people. You are hiding information. Since last year, December, we knew that water was not safe, and you did not tell us. Even us, we drank that water. Live that was still alive. We're supposed to have been dead now because of you.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I hope we are going to use this opportunity of today to the best of our abilities in our time. You see, as leaders, all of us, including myself, the unfortunate part is that we can't go out there and say we inherited a problem. But ours is to deal with the problem at hand. But it's so unfortunately that we as councillors, we not implementers. Because maybe things would have been better if we could. Because of the hand that people has raised for us on the 1st of November. And shortly, in less than 3 months, we have to go back and tell them the stories, everything. As we are sitting here, I was listening, the presenter was talking about the means and the ways to save water and whatever, and I was asking myself that, is it possible that we as the municipality can save the water to the extent that people, a human person can stay for 4 days without water? And what consciousness we have as councillors that are being elected by the people? Because we still better off, we buy this bottle of water, and I can make my washing red wet and wash with this water. But what about those people that doesn't have water to wash and water to drink? We haven't slept last night because of the influx calls that are coming. Of people that are worried about the water that is not there. It's a big day today. So I believe where you're sitting, you're busy calling your officials to look at that problem. I know of 2 wards. This one, 41, is the 3rd one. It's 42, it's 43. They don't have water. It's a big day today. How do we breathe when our Mbula, that is the poor of the poorest, are facing that situation? I think God will judge us, though He said, "Thou shalt not judge." The second question, you are talking about the means and the ways to save water. But it's the same directorate that let people live in Zwide area for 4 days with waste in the yard, and also getting in, also in the houses when they flush their toilets. their toilets because of the weak drainage system. And the problem is the same here. We're all complaining about your response. All of us are complaining about your efficient and proper response that is not in that directorate. What is wrong with your directorate? What is wrong with your directorate? A week before last, when we had our public health standing committee, the officials were complaining about your non-availability. They've been trying to call you for this joint committee. But it was hard for this joint committee to sit. And we're glad today because it's here. But as much as I'm glad, I hope that we're not going to come again and sit here in this joint committee crying, but we will come to this joint committee to clap hands and to pat your shoulders, to say, well done, guys. We're not here to push you or officials, because we know you're coming from the townships that we are sitting in. But please don't forget about the townships when you are staying in Sepa, because we as councillors are still in those townships. And your parents, including our parents, are still in those townships. Please do us a favor. Remember, when you were still illiterate, you were in the same situation. But now you should be proud and say, I'm here to save my people's situation because I'm coming from there. Please, MMC, I hope in your time, I know you from very far, I hope in your time, the issue of the effectiveness of the customer services, whether it's the whole municipality, whether you will better the one of your portfolio committee, but at your time is going to change, because getting a reference to report a best drain and poor water is useless. And people are no longer going to the councillors' offices because they are fed up. To put it, I'm sorry to put it in that language, but we must come to a point where we will show that things that are happening in those offices, those beautiful offices that we don't have. You know, in this time there are councillors' offices out there that are even a gate. Children are playing up until 9 o'clock, the offices are open. But these officials are sitting in very beautiful offices with aircon, but they're not delivering to us. I hope in your time these things are going to change. I cannot elaborate more on some issues that my colleagues have talked about, but I'm interested to ask in this thing. I hope I heard it you clearly when you said you are going to increase the issue of water testing, but I will only trust you when you put time frame. You attach time frame on it, because we are sitting now, we are facing a problem now. Really, this, because what we were told in our standing committee that the water testing, I understand it's in our standing committee, but it's working together with you. I hope that you are going to sit jointly again and improve this for the best and attach frame. And I think whilst you are still facing a problem, the water needs to be tested every day. Every day. Whatever about the budget adjustment, you need to demand that money, because it's about the communities. These water must be improved and checked clearly or tested clearly for the betterment of our communities. The other things that I've brought here, my colleagues already talked about it, but my last point would be, I was also shocked when we received this year 2 things. That is our diaries without your conduct as it is of the directorates. The last thing is that we also received your places, MMCs, without your conduct. And that, to my knowledge, it's not normal. Because the time I left here in 2011, whenever we received at the beginning of the term, those places we received them with the conduct so that you can be easily accessible. So whoever has made that poster with only your faces without your conduct did something wrong and a wasteful budget. Because your contacts were supposed to be attached there so that, because you just get that elevated status when you are inside the municipality. You came as councillor. So they must not try to elevate you and detach you from us. Because you are still councillors, you must be accessible out there. If we can't access you, how the communities are going to access you? So those were my last point. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can we put Ward 52 dispatch on the list with the previous speaker? Because we've got a lot of and big problems there. It's water outages now.
What is the reason for these outages?
And my worry is, it's Friday, our promise is going home at 11 o'clock, and it's a long weekend. The people are going to be out without water.
No, they will work is overtime.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, MMCs and the panel in front. Maybe I misunderstood the session here. I thought we were here to ask questions, so I will just base mine on questions. And
asking questions around the water quality.
yes, around the water quality, but it also have influences on our service delivery, accountability, transparency, etc., etc. Just to come back on the presentation, Tati Joseph, on that, what went wrong. The last one, it says that movement of experienced staff from Grassridge to Nooit Gedacht. How come only on that stage that we find out that there's experienced people and not experienced people? And why at such a late stage was the experienced people moved to that Nooit Gedacht? And then I would like to ask, I've seen this presentation, except now for the water quality over and over from the other ED, all fair and nice. I don't see where we measure ourselves on the water plan that is established. So we must measure ourselves to have ourselves held accountable, to measure ourselves on that. I support the transparency in asking for the water results on a weekly basis. I want to add on that, as what Councillor Murray also said, we need to be transparent, we need to measure ourselves, we need to give feedback. And I challenge you, MMC, please to assist us in having a weekly report on how many water leaks was reported, how many water leaks was fixed, so that we know where we stand. And I normally get it from I don't want to say insider, but from a official in at the call center. So it's easy for anyone to get that, but so that everyone knows where we stand on water leaks, how many was reported, how many was fixed. Yeah, that is basically it. I appreciate. Thank you.
Chair, just in support of the councillor here and my colleague over there, with regards to the water trucks, there is a brand new truck standing at the track in Galvindale for the last 4 to 5 weeks. It does not have a driver. It's a brand new truck, it's never been driven. It's standing there for 5 weeks. Maybe the officials can investigate and get tracked to work. Just some meaningful solutions. There's one track.
Water truck.
Water truck is at the Galvin track.
Yeah, no.
If it's a petrol tanker, phone me.
Procurement processes in the municipality. If the truck is standing somewhere, it's not been procured through a proper procurement process, you can't just say go and take that truck and it's going to call for something else because there's somebody who has also that similar truck, but maybe it's inside the garage. This one when I was seeing because it's parked outside, and when you drive you see it. So whenever you procure, must be transparent, people must know, advertise, all of that. There are processes for that. But the issues that are raised must be responded to. But I would want to confine our responses to the water quality because that is why we are here. Issues of water leaks, tankers, other issues, those are I&E matters, standing committee that must deal with. Let's confine ourselves to for now. When we finish with this item of water quality, maybe there are items in your agenda that deal with leaks and other issues, water tankers. Why do we have outages for a week? That should be responded to by I&E as to. But we are dealing now with the water quality in this joint meeting. So I would just add that we deal with that only on one hand.
I think this one will deal with both of as a department because it is very serious. It has something to do with health. There is a commercial route up here at 141. It's like a bridge. It's for the flowing water, a clean water leakage, where the sewer goes through that water leakage. Since December, and that thing is not fixed. The people of water, through Mr. Banzana, send the plumbers there, and they can't continue to keep their rice-based sewer that flows on top of that clean water. I think that needs to urgently be addressed. And other issues will relate on I&E.
No, yeah. In the only report you were referenced, I mean, these are things that really are frustrating. Councillor says they reported something in December.
Yeah.
It's now March. March now is going.
Send it to Mr. Ngoni as well.
Even EDA, Perrier is here, water and sanitation is here, AMSHA is here. We must deal with this. Please, colleagues, let's deal with this complaint, but yeah, just take AMSHA, now we have a come, Tatu Perry. They must deal with make sure that they deal with this very councillor is reporting something here since December. It has not been attended to. Can it be sorted? Thank you very much. Let's respond.
Thank you, councillors. See, colleagues. I've got a number of questions I'm going to deal with. Some colleagues as well. We are going to deal with some other questions. Let me start by this one. I think there's no water in Ukraine. I think it's a serious issue.
Yeah.
It's probably an issue that we are looking at. I've got a report that there is water currently. It's back. Again, it talks to the water shortage in the system. But I also need to communicate this at this level. That from today, possibly last week onwards, we are not able to procure water trucks to any community because there is no budget for it. I'm very serious. And that budget is supposed to be approved as part of the adjustment budget. There is provision made in there. So, Councillor, you can phone me today. I'm not going to be able to dispatch a water truck where there's no water. It can be a consequence that comes to me. I'm not going to be able to do that. Because I don't have the budget. That's the first thing. So, Grassridge failed. The operational risk associated with drought as we speak, because there's shortage of water in the system. Grassridge is a reservoir converted to a temporary treatment works. It's not a conventional treatment work. There was no additional people that were hired to look into that particular reservoir.
Yeah, no, I think I need to stop Joseph here. And I don't know how, because I know this committee does not have the powers to deal with what is raising. But he's raising a point currently that you're saying there are areas where they are without water for days, and they also mentioned that there are even no water tankers. He's saying now I'm not going to do it until budget is approved. And yeah, I know your ex. Something to order.
We're dealing with the matter here that has been happening for quite some time. And we have been dealing with the communities directly around this issue. And we are supposed to be angry here around this issue. And if an official is going to stand here and be emotional when he's responding to our anger that we're getting from the communities, it's not going to be acceptable. Not here. We're councillors here, we demand answers from officials. And if he can't control his emotions and be angry when he's responding to us, then we'll have a problem. We'll have a problem. So I'm humbly asking you, Chair, to call this gentleman into order and try to respond to us in the manner in which that is going to be acceptable to us.
Chair, I'm also rising on a point of order. It's on the similar line. What we didn't discuss was a budget. When there was a water, we coming on since when? I've referred to October, November. There was no adjustment budget. So Councillor Matkula is 100% correct. It can't be that Mr. Chatsiri is coming now here and telling us about an adjustment budget that's supposed to be passed at the end of February when we had problems before the 27th of February. So it's unacceptable. No, that's what he went to the budget. That's what he was saying.
Misunderstood.
How did I misunderstand?
He's responding to a question about areas that are without water and there are no tankers to be dispatched now as we speak. He said he can't dispatch tankers to those areas now. They've made provision in the adjustment budget for budget to be made available. But it cannot be done now until that budget is passed.
Okay.
For tankers to be dispatched to those areas.
No,
So it means.
That's what he was saying.
Chairman said no, because you have distributed water that was not in good quality to our people instead of giving them water tankers. It starts there. Was instead of giving our people that water when you knew that water was not right.
No.
You are supposed to give us water tankers.
Yeah.
You know, so it starts there.
Yes.
Before the slipping issue.
No, it's fine. The issue of water quality is still going to respond to it. Still going to respond to that. There are questions posed on the water quality. He's responding now to an issue of areas without water. Now, so if we're saying let's disregard that, Joseph has responded, it's fine. let's continue. We can continue to respond. Then we leave this part where, but you must know, those areas without water, there's not going to be trucks, because the ED is saying, I don't have budget. Budget is stuck in council, not approving. So we can respond to the other questions that have been posed.
Okay, just be clear.
Okay, just hold Joseph.
Sorry, Chair. Can we limit the reply to the item that we're discussing, which is water quality? All the other items will be discussed after this meeting at the I&E portfolio committee. So we're going to table it there. So can we, at the moment, just focus on the water quality issues, so that we get this over and done with, and we move along. Thank you, Chair.
That was my earlier suggestion. And then you guys, I mean, the committee came and said something else, and when you allow that, now you are back to what I was saying. Because this is the only joint for that, water quality. The other issue, this issue, for instance, it's not part of that. It's not part of the water quality matter. It's an operational matter that needs to be dealt with by the I&E standing committee. So I agree with the council. So can we confine our, for now, to the water quality issue, colleagues?
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, council.
Chair, I understood what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, sorry. But we cannot postpone something that affects the lives of the people. Just take it from you when you don't have water for 5 days. There are people that have been gone to work from yesterday. There are children that have been gone to work from yesterday, to school, I mean, from yesterday. What do? We are here as councillors. Here is the standing committee affected. So we're saying we must postpone that. It's only 2 things. So we can make time. But this one, I understand this thing of the water quality is affecting the whole community. But there's this part of community that is affected by water. No, Chair.
No. We are not disagreeing, council. But we are saying this committee, joint committee, is only dealing with the issue of water quality. This matter will be dealt with. There's a committee that will sit here and deal with these issues that you are raising today still. But it would not be this joint, it would only be I&E. Councillors who have a vested interest in that item can remain and be part of the I&E. There's nothing that says they can't. So that we can, let's stick to the matter now of the water quality for now. That will be dealt with later by the I&E standing committee.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There was an question about probably the university being involved in the investigation of the water quality failures. The city manager has instructed the university to engage. They have provided a scope of work as well as a costing to it. The appointment is being finalized by the city manager to have an independent opinion as well as looking into the failures at Grassridge, to be specific. So that independent opinion and investigation is going to be concluded. I don't have time frame at this point in time, but I know that the investigation has been engaged formally. The issue about the boil notice, councillors, there was a meeting between infrastructure engineering as well as public health on the 21st of February, and the meeting was to discuss specific the results and the failures, emanating from the laboratory. And it was on that meeting, which was chaired by myself. Dr. Ndwele was there as well, as other officials. And then we decided that we needed to escalate it to the city manager as well as to inform the mayor that actually went public. And that happened on the 21st of February. So there was a meeting, a crisis meeting of some sort to deal with the quality issues. Following that, there was a meeting again on the 22nd, whereby an action plan was decided in order to troubleshoot and understand exactly where the failures were coming from. Which then was pointed to Grassridge temporary treatment. Let me deal with Grassridge temporary treatment works. Probably to agree with the sentiment that probably these failures was a systematic risk which has actually manifested over time. It wasn't a single thing that happened overnight and now there was a failure. And as there was build up of sludge in that reservoir, probably we see deterioration of quality of water, which eventually manifested itself, around, the peak of the 14th and February. Just to respond as well, that Grassridge is a temporary treatment works. It was designed as a stopgap measure to be able to treat the amount that would have been treated by non-contact phase 3, which was supposed to have been initially completed in 2019 in July, when it was shifted again to September 2021, and it has now shifted to July 2022.
What water? Bottled water at a meeting where we are being
Exactly.
sanctions.
We're talking about water and then what is the water country?
I'm taking a chance. So the point needs raising.
No. Doctor, can you
Sorry.
the doc just put the bottle water next to me and cancel it for water. No, some councillors have already said there is no water in this meeting and they need water. So I think it's been arranged. This one is the doctor's one. Bottled water is coming. Unfortunately, we don't have a tap level again. This is the part.
Everybody drink tap water. Officials first.
No, we trust the water. Or the report is going to tell us, the response is going to tell us if the water is safe or not. And then we don't say it trust. The report is going to reply to this question. I hope your order is been responded to.
Okay, so I was saying that a Grassridge temporary treatment works was a stopgap measure to treat additional water into the system up until phase 3 of the non-contact treatment work was completed. So the Grassridge temporary treatment works will be decommissioned once phase 3 is ready to go. And that is in July this year. So it means that the reservoir itself then will be converted into a normal storage reservoir where we're going to store treated water. Then the whole full amount will be then treated at non-contact treatment works and pumped to the city already treated. We will not be pumping raw water into Grassridge because the full capacity will be accommodated at non-contact treatment works. So that's the future of what's going to happen. Again, it has been a stopgap measure that has been implemented for quite some time, and because of the delays of non-contact treatment works, it has been pushed on and on. There was a question about the failure. Why did the system fail? The very first answer to that, councillors, is that the treatment works itself, temporary, was designed as a reservoir, not a conventional treatment works. That's the first thing. So the efficiency of that treatment works is compromised because the design is not foolproof to manage the whole water treatment value chain. One of the biggest problems is that the desludging mechanism of the reservoir itself, one is manual, it's not, equipped with actuators which we can actually suck the sludge out of the system. So it's a manual process, and at some point it compromises, the sludge coming out of that reservoir. That's the first thing. So then it necessitated the build-up of sludge inside the reservoir, up to the level of the launderer, which actually take, clear water out of that reservoir. So that's the first thing. There's an operational aspect to it as well, which is mentioned in the report, that it's not a full-time treatment works, which is meant full-time. As much as there are people on site coming again, that's also look other many other treatment works, like the youth neck treatment works, as well as the European treatment works. So there were operational inefficiencies associated with the human capital on that side, which again is a subject of investigation, and the opinion that's going to be provided by the university will necessitate whether it's consequence management, that is being talked about. So again, as a process of dealing with corrective action around what happened, that's why then the university is then appointed to give an independent and personal opinion as which might facilitate consequence management consequence management for that process. There was a question about water. Councillor raised an issue in the western side where water has been on and off, and for the past 4 days, my understanding there was no water. Councillors, the turbidity groundwater, yeah, that's what I want to talk to you.
It was 14th of March.
Yeah, 14th of March. Yeah. 10th of March, 14th of March. So that's one of the biggest things that we are going to say is that we're going to encounter intermittent supply or water shortages because we don't have enough water in the system. And some of our infrastructure, including reservoirs, obviously hasn't been, there is residuals that accumulate at the bottom of the reservoirs. And those residuals, when water goes and comes, it's flushed into the system and it causes color changes into your water. And as long as we're going to have this intermittent supply, we're going to continue to have this. And I'm going to say this again. It's something that we're going to continue to have, but I think what we need to look into as well, in the short term, what then do we do? One of the mechanisms that we're going to be doing is to constantly monitor the acute health determinants, which cause immediate danger to people now, and being able to deal with those in the short term. Because with the compromised recirculation as it speaks because of shortages on and off, we're going to also have turbidity as failures, we're going to have color failures. But what we have been paying attention to is the microbiological determinants, which are of danger and imminent to people's health now. Again, in future, we need them to advise people that, this is the scenario which we are operating in because of drought. They're going to be this intermittent supply, they're going to be this color changing. And as I said, one of the items that we're going to do is to monitor constantly and provide, some information around, the determinants that we are finding here. Unfortunately, with intermittent supply, reservoirs going to run dry, air going to become trapped into our pipe system, vacuums. With that mix of chemicals, there is also a possibility of growth of bacteria in the system. So, because of the drought phenomena which we are currently in the shortage of water, we're gonna continue to experience, the quality risk as well as a quality risk associated with water. That up until such time we have got enough water in the reticulation system and we can avoid intermittent supply, then probably those discoloring issues going to be mitigated. As I pointed out, this is a systematic risk. It started in 2016. 2016, then with the shortage of water, we knew that there were going to be aspects related to quality. We knew that there were going to be aspects related to quantity. And we knew that there were going to be aspects related to the operational arrangement of our reticulation system. Councillors, we prepared in 2016 already a drought mitigation plan. And it actually mentioned aspects of how are we going to augment our water reticulation? How are we going to deal with water shortages? How are we going to deal with leakage management and other aspects, that helps us to mitigate drought? And that plan, among others, was posted, and there is a value attached to it. Some of the elements are funded, and some of the elements are not fully funded, and some of the elements does not have funding to it. But we are implementing some of those interventions. For example, in order to augment the avoirs that are currently being drawn into the city, combined, they're going to give us plus or minus about 45 megaliters on a daily basis, probably around September this year. It's going to be additional water that's going to come into the system, and when that happens, it will then reduce the deficit and possibly reduce intermittent supply in the city as well. And that way we can reduce the quality risk associated with water. From a communication point of view, I see colleagues from communication were here just now, they're sitting at the back. I think what has been happening over time, communicating, water shortages in the city, there is a tool that has been developed, I think it's through for councillors through WhatsApp. We developed some of the messages and we pass it on for them to actually broadcast it. I'm probably the first to concede that we can do in terms of communication, we can do more, and probably we'll look into other aspects of how we can communicate better and improve going forward. There was an issue about filtration at Grassridge. As a temporary treatment facility, there is no filtration at that plant, as it was designed as a temporary stopgap measure.
It's temporary permanently now.
And that's not the cause of the contamination as per se. But as I mentioned, one of the biggest causes is the operational efficiency about dislodging that actually build up into the reservoir, and then it affects water that is coming out of the laundry and going into the system. But again, as a stopgap measure, there was no need for us to actually put filtration beds. The idea was that it was a short-term plan that was going to actually assist us to augment water into the system up until Mercatak is through. And we are hoping that in the next few weeks, we will have phase 3, and we will abandon the treatment facility and use that as a result. There was an issue about the assurance of the water quality. We can assure the quality of water as the result become available to us in terms of the monitoring and testing regime. One thing I just need to say to councillors as well is that our results are an indication of water that has gone through into the system already, because the results came later. Because the water is dynamic, you treat sewage directly into the system. So when the results are tested on Monday and they come on Wednesday, the water is already into the system. But we use those results as an indication of the quality output, of our system.
But let it be seen, let it be noticed in
We
the public.
continue to monitor that, and the frequency is going to be increased. I mean, there's been discussion in public health. As I said, we have established critical control points in the reticulation system where we're going to increase frequency, have more regular samples on those, and we're going to use those to flag, if there's any quality issue that comes out of our reservoir. We are also exploring technology to the effect that we might need to have automatic, testing apparatus on outlets of our reservoir, for example, to determine equally. But it's something that we are still trying to pursue, such that if there is any failure, then immediately it's flagged, and you can understand, precautions that we need to take from that point of view. There is there is quite a lot of detail around the results themselves, especially from October 2021, where failures has been detected. But I think, as I mentioned earlier on, that when results are communicated to us by public health as well as scientific services, there are immediate remedies which colleagues from water distribution will institute immediately. Other instances, as I mentioned, there is chlorine that is added. Unfortunately, in the very short term, Councillor Annette, that's the remedy which we are actually using in order to manage, microbiological failures. We do understand that there are going to be long-term problems associated with it, but I think as a stopgap measure, one would like to at least in the short term have a solution around acute health determinants that have an immediate effect to your health. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, but we are trying to use every tool that is in our toolbox to ensure that at least from a quality perspective, we mitigate the waste that can be caused by determinants from microbiological the issue about the results and making them available, and I think it's an issue that has been noted. Probably as we monitor and test our regimes currently with our critical points that has been established, we then need to make the results on a regular basis and frequent to all our stakeholders, to ensure that there is confidence and trust that could be viewed from that perspective. Operational level, I don't know if there are colleagues from the scientific services, if there is any can assist. Well, there was an issue about the advice to the mayor around the cheek. Probably safe to say that, in terms of the norms and standards for public for environmental health, there is guidelines that are actually prescribed if there is a water failure, and one of those obviously is to the use of bleach, and it is prescribed, and it is text to write that up as part of the norms and standards. Obviously, I think GP is
repeating himself.
But it's bleach. In fact, if I can as well, just share this that chlorine itself, you know, it's in the same category as bleach that you use for your clothes. So it's a scientific way that is recorded, you know, in terms of norms and standards.